Do you want to make your manga feel more like the ones you read growing up? In this video, I'll go over the 4-act story structure, or Kishotenketsu, for Japanese storytelling in more detail. I've often heard that the word manga is just the Japanese term for comics. While true, I feel like this is a little oversimplistic and brushes over the subtle but important differences in the way American and Japanese creators approach their stories. Personally, I feel like this is why Avatar: The Last Airbender, while it looks like anime, it's made in the East, it's animated in Korea, but it doesn't feel quite like anime. And, you know, it's always debated on, is it anime? Is it not anime? And I believe it was written in the West, and I would suspect that it's written with 3-act structure instead of 4, and it's this subtle undercurrent that you can feel as a viewer. I may be wrong, but that's just my suspicion. So what's the difference between 3-act and 4-act? Let's start with the acts we know. As English speakers, this is what you're going to be most familiar with. You grew up with it, you read it now. It's almost guaranteed you've experienced it in the media that you consume, the Western media you consume. So let's break down 3-act structure. In the first act, a conflict is set up. It's turned around in the second act and resolved in the third. Movies, novels, comics usually go this way and must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Aristotle is generally blamed for this, since he established it in his plays and dramas. Greek plays were basically divided into 3 parts. The main part, or focus, on a thing that happened. Then there's before the thing that happened and after the thing that happened. Thinking about this, to me, it actually reminds me more of Kishotenketsu than what 3-act structure has become. Over time, especially in screenplays, 3-act has become setup, confrontation, and resolution. It is action-oriented and driven forward. And it relies on a conflict or a linear passage of time, which affects how the story can be told. Kishotenketsu is a little different. It doesn't rely on that initial conflict and resolution for the story to work. Instead, you've got the statement of the topic, the discussion, the change of point of view, and the resolution. It's often described as a story without conflict, which is true but not entirely true, because as you know, as you've seen many anime and manga, there's plenty of conflict. Conflict could be the stated topic, but so could sitting at a table and doing nothing. 4-act structure works really well for all kinds of stories, even stories where nothing is happening, but it works the best for horror and comedy, because of that little twist, the recontextualization and change of point of view in step 3. This fluid, less linear format relies on a change of perspective and a change of perception, and as such, it doesn't rely on a problem, question, or something happening. Instead of relying on a struggle or conflict, it's simply the situation at hand, which could be a moment or an epic saga, depending on how you decide to apply it. It's important to note that Kishotenketsu is a specific pattern and not just 3-act structure with a 4th act tacked on, which does sometimes happen in the West, but the difference being that the extra 4th act follows on from the conclusive 3rd act in resolving the question posed in acts 1 or 2, which is definitely not what happens in Kishotenketsu, because there's no question. So what's a way to remember this? The 4-act structure, Kishotenketsu, in true Japanese style, is named for its parts. Ki, or set out. Think of it as hello. Introduce the story or sequence, set the scene, walk in the door. This part can be simple or complex, but is crucial to making us care about this character or the situation we've stepped into. In a single spread, this would be the first panel. Show, or carry, is the discussion. Now we're in the scene. We flesh it out and show what's going on, or we greet the host and set the foundation for the twist we're going to make later. You could say this is our main perspective, setting up the baseline. This is the section that's usually the longest and filled with the most information, but you don't want to make any drastic changes at this point. Use it to develop the character or situation and pull the reader in, get them really emotionally invested. If this were a single spread, I would consider it everything after the first panel, especially everything that guides you to the page turn. If it's a 4 koma, it's simply the second panel. Resist the temptation to include any major changes, as this is the setup phase. 10, or turn. This is your fresh perspective. This is the twist. This is the twist, new view, or recontextualization. In a basic way, 10 aims to change the way the reader sees Ki and Sho by introducing new and often surprising elements or new bits of information. This part is why it's really good for horror and comedy. The scene is set, we are here, we meet the host, and then maybe a friend, boss, stalker walks up and greets them with a drink. The host introduces themselves, and that changes your view of them and the party. This is the most interesting and infuriating section to me. I've kind of settled on not overthinking it and getting really stuck. Instead, I like to think of the twist first and then work backwards into the setup. Be careful not to get stuck because there are so many possibilities. The shift can be used to great effect in horror and comedy, where brevity is key and the convergence of two seemingly disparate concepts elicits a response. In this case, either shock or laughter. Remember, this technique is non-linear and without dependence on time. Everything is about that perspective and perception. Ketsu, or bind, or all things considered. Unlike 3 acts, this section is not a result or a resolution of a posed question or conflict. It's the sum of all the parts and brings everything together. The difference is subtle, but important. To finish up our party scenario, this would be being at the party with a friend or a stalker or whatever. Nothing has to happen. Things just are. This is where we are. Ketsu is where we are. In my research, I came across a short statement that summarized the two approaches to storytelling in a really interesting way. As in an American story, man conquers outer space. In a Japanese story, man finds his place in outer space. Again, the difference is subtle, but important. This format can be employed in a technique known as all the way down. Essentially, your overarching narrative can be 4-act, your arcs can be 4-act, your volumes can be 4-act, your chapters can be 4-act, your pages can be 4-act, it all the way down. It's really neat to see how it can break down. I mean, 4 komas are 1 page, literally 4 panels. And The House of 5 Leaves is often given as a really good example of this. Each page and moment in this meandering, quiet narrative is 4-act structure. Once you understand and pay attention to it, you'll start seeing it everywhere in Asian writing. It'll be in manga and anime, obviously, poems, novels, everywhere. Recently, I noticed these beats in anime seasons, down to the point where show is almost always in episode 8. I don't know if it ruins it or not, but there you go. And when you have shows based on 4 koma, it's really interesting to see the beats play out. I was watching Komi Can't Communicate, and that show is extremely 4-beat. But weirdly, the manga is not necessarily a 4 koma, but I guess the anime was written in 4 koma style, so it's really easy to see. Seeing this structure in action will hopefully help you implement it in your work, giving it the same beats and flow of the manga that you love. 4 koma is a really good way to practice this. You have to take your idea and break it down to its fundamentals and divide it out over the 4 parts. You have to figure out your twist and your recontextualization in 1 panel. This can be a thought, a realization, or looking at something across the room that changes what the character might have been talking about. I recommend playing with it. It's good fun. Have you tried this format? Have you noticed it in things that you've seen or read? If you're ready to give it a try, check out this video where I go over how to start a manga rough draft.